Let's get you in the loop in the AeroCaster multicam switcher setup from Roland. So what do we know? Well, this new tiny live streaming system is a wireless setup from Roland. The overall system is made up of 3 parts. Part 1 is the iPad app for a lot of configuration and switching. Part 2 is this hardware panel, the VRC01. And then part 3 is your sources, so wireless cameras like iOS and Android devices. Keep in mind though that a lot of the configuration and controls seem to take place on the iPad app, and then the buttons are just for your showtime, switching, and audio control. And I think it makes a lot of sense to break down the hardware like this, where you have real buttons for certain tasks and software buttons for other ones. The system supports up to 4 wireless cameras connected to the same network, and those can be iOS or Android running this AeroCaster camera app. You can make adjustments to these camera shots with the tablet app, as you can see here, although in this demo video it doesn't seem super smooth. It seems you can also use that host iPad as well as a 5th camera source, which would be quite nice as a 5th camera shot so long as it's in the right place. It seems that the live streaming part is done via the iPad application, and Roland here are promoting that as something you can do over Wi-Fi or 4G and 5G connections, though I'd be really keen to test it out over a wired connection instead, because that usually works out a lot nicer whenever you're in a live situation. In terms of audio, Roland's one of those companies that does quite nice by you, and it has these full XLR connections right on the back, perfect for an interview or podcast style studio setup. And for graphics and theme music, you can host all of that stuff on the iPad application, load up clips that you have stored on there on your iCloud drive or things like that, and it'll work nicely. It also mentions on the marketing material about text overlays, although I'm not sure how editable these are at this point. I'd have to give that a test and see. The hardware panel, the VRC01, has some volume controls and audio controls on the left-hand side, and then your camera switching on the right-hand side. And like many multicam switching setups these days, you have buttons for picture-in-picture and split views. Interestingly, there's no traditional locking power connection on the back of this. It's all powered by USB. It's also quite odd to look at the back of a video switching hardware panel and not see many HDMI, SDI ports, but I guess that makes sense with all this wireless camera control and setups. Now, as mentioned, the iPad app will do a lot of the work during the show, and I'm not a huge fan of using just touchscreens for a live production, and I think the mixture between the software buttons and the hardware buttons might be a nice balance. Another nice use for this live app on the iPad is that you can actually log into streaming accounts and stream from there, so you shouldn't have to mess around with streaming keys and URLs and things like that. At this point, we don't know much more about it. The AeroCaster camera app seems to be available already in iOS, and some of the other applications are coming later. The expected release date of the iPad app, the live app, is around March, as well as the hardware seems to be coming out around March. I'm not 100% sure on prices yet, but the hardware I've seen around $300, but I'll be sure to add a comment below this video if I find more information on that stuff. Alright, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, consider yourself in the loop on the new AeroCaster Roland setup for multicam streaming.